Hi there, Jeff here from the Wetsuit Centre, talking to you today about the O'Neill Hammer range of wetsuits for summer 2021. The O'Neill Hammer for ladies is called the Bahia, but essentially it is the same technical specifications for each wetsuit, so sort of covering both bases for you. But the O'Neill Hammer is available in lots of different styles of wetsuit. You've obviously got the full suit, the steamer wetsuit, you've got things like the shorty, and you've got long arm, short leg. And then it goes right down in the ladies range to a long Jane wetsuit as well. So lots of different variations, okay? I'm going to walk you through what the wetsuit contains in terms of features in a second. But one thing that's worth noting is where the hammer sits within the O'Neill range, okay? Now you've got the reactor, which is the entry-level wetsuit, then you've got the hammer, and you've got the epic, okay? The differences essentially come down to the stitching and the quality of neoprene, okay? Within the reactor range, you've got super stretch, super flexible neoprene, but just in the upper bodies of the wetsuits. Okay, with the hammer, you've got that neoprene the whole way through. And then as you go into the O'Neill Epic, you've got that super stretch neoprene the whole way through, but then you also start to get glued and blind stitch seams, which you don't get with the reactor and the hammer. With the Epic, you get thermal lining, and then as you go up through the range, it gets more and more technical. But essentially, the O'Neill hammer, you're getting that super stretch neoprene the whole way through the suit, unlike the reactor where it's just the upper body, but you do get the same seams, which is flatlock seams, and you also get the option of a chest zip. So that's essentially the real difference, and it's a nice wetsuit which sits in the sort of between the reactor and the epic and offers a really good budget alternative for a summer wetsuit. Now, the reason this suit is only available for summer comes back to the stitching of the suit. Okay, the flatlock seam is only really conducive for using in warmer water, and the reason is it bleeds in water, so it does let water through the seam. What we're going to do, give you a bit of a close-up on the flatlock seam here. But essentially, the way they manufacture the seam is they put two pieces of neoprene together and they stitch the whole way through. Okay, now that's much easier to manufacture because with the glued and blind stitch seam, they stitch halfway through and then they manually glue the suit on the inside to seal the seam. Okay, so a flatlock seam is cheaper to manufacture, and obviously that's reflected in the retail price. The downsides are that it does bleed water, okay? So if you're in really, really cold water where you would need a 5mm wetsuit, a flatlock seam is not really going to be appropriate because it will bleed in cold water and you'll get cold quite quickly. Yeah, flatlock seam is ideal for thinner or warmer water wetsuits, okay? So that's the reason you only really get the hammer and the Bahia for the summer months within the UK. Now when we're talking about the thickness of the wetsuit, with the full suit it's a 3-2. You've got 3mm on the lower body, 2mm on the upper body where you need more flexibility. With the shorty it's 2mm all over, and that varies through the range with the Bahias and everything. But when you see that number, it's basically referring to the thickness of the neoprene. Now coming back to the neoprene itself, it's super stretched the whole way through. So that's really light, flexible neoprene. It has more air cells within the rubber, which make it more pliable, more flexible, and the jersey over the top is of a higher grade, so it's softer and more flexible and smoother to the touch and more comfortable, okay? One of the biggest differences, I'd say, with this suit is the entry system with the hammer. The hammer is a chest entry wetsuit, okay? The differences between the back zip and the chest zip are multiple. We've done a separate video on that. But essentially, the biggest difference is you don't have a zip on the back of the suit, which means you've got more freedom of movement through the back there. You don't have a seal coming through, a broken seal around the neck, so you don't have a zip running through the neck, which allows to create a tighter, purer seal around the neck, hopefully stopping less flush throughs. And some people just like to have the zip on the front because it's easy to sort of undo and do up without reaching around the back and grabbing a lanyard, okay? But essentially this is a chest entry system. What happens is you have the inside of the wetsuit here. You've got two pieces of neoprene, which means you can open up nice and wide there and get in through the top, okay? And then the actual chest entry system itself is sewn over the top. The zip goes from in to out, which means that you don't have to fiddle around matching up the teeth, trying to get it line up. So it zips in to out, and then you've got a little toggle here, which you can then just clip down the wetsuit to make sure that the zip doesn't come undone again, okay? Kind of hard to do with one hand. But essentially that's the way the chest entry works. But the downside is it's a bit harder to get in and out of, okay? So people with less mobility, less flexibility might struggle with the chest entry system and find that the back zip is a bit more appropriate to them. But essentially the biggest difference then is the quality of neoprene. And also with this particular suit, you have less seams as well. So you don't have that smooth skin panel like you do with the Reactor and with the Epic. That smooth panel basically is sewn into some of the suits just to repel wind a bit better. It's more conducive to use with a back zip suit because you can get a nice big panel of smooth skin on the front. And then it will run down on the back as well. But with the hammer, it's double lined. Okay, so what that refers to is the lining of the neoprene. It's lighter lined on both the inside and the outside of this wetsuit. With the reactor, that smooth neoprene is only lined with a lycra on the inside of that panel. So when they say single lining or double lining, that's essentially what they mean. The single lined neoprene will only have the lycra lining on one side, so that's why you get the smooth texture on the other side. Okay, moving further down the suit, you get the standard things you would expect, like the Duraflex knee pad, which is a particularly robust material, stops the knees wearing through on the suit. Okay, and it's particularly good for people learning to surf or who use your knee to duck dive or whatever sport you're doing. It tends to be the knees that wear through first, so it's a nice bit of tech to make it last longer. You get what we call a roll neck collar. Okay, and what essentially that is there's two pieces of neoprene together there, and the inside piece has that smooth lining. What that means is the inside piece will stick to your neck and allow the outside piece to move independently. It's particularly good at stopping rash and rub around your neck because the inside piece will not move up and down your neck. But the downside of it can feel quite tight around the neck because you've got two pieces of neoprene there, making it quite tight, but it does create a very good seal for that reason. So it's down to preference, but it is a cool little bit of technology to stop any water flush throughs and any rash on the suit as well. Okay, the zip on the suit itself is a specially treated PK zip. And essentially that's just a zip which doesn't corrode with salt, it's waterproof and it will last a long time. Any water that does come in through your chest entry as well, just to let you know, you do have a drain hole on the arm here. That's not an intentional hole or a manufacturer error. That means that water can drain out through the chest entry system here. You've got one around the back there as well. Okay, so it's all thought out completely. Another little feature, you've got a key pocket on the leg there on the outside of the thigh. Obviously only good for non-electric keys, but it's a very useful thing to have on your wetsuit as well. Within the kids wetsuit then, it's pretty much exactly the same thing. You've got that same sort of design, the same template, the same panels with minimal stitching, the same neoprene the whole way through and the same chest entry system. Okay, one thing that you don't have with the kids O'Neill hammer is zips in the ankles. Okay, with the reactor you get the zip in the ankle, you don't get that with the hammer. So it's something worth considering if it's particularly a young child that you're looking to get in and out of the wetsuit, because sometimes they can struggle to get their feet through the wetsuits, so the reactor has that zip making it a bit easier. Okay, so here we have the inside of the wetsuit. It's Flatlock stitching the whole way through, you can see that, indicated by the bright blue stitching. With glued and blind stitching, what you'll sometimes see on the inside of the suit is like a flat tape on the seams or taping on the critical points of the seams. Okay, you don't necessarily need that with the Flatlock stitching because it's very robust on its own, but also you can't really tape over the top of the seam which goes the whole way through because it's not going to create a proper bond. So Flatlock stitching the whole way through, nice big panels you can see throughout the suit as well. Any stitches or seams that are put into the wetsuit are strategically designed to make sure they don't give any restrictions. So they're bent, there's none put over the top of the shoulders, none under the shoulders or in the armpits where you need flexibility. So it's all very well thought out and the minimal amount of stitching is put into the suit. The O'Neill hammer and O'Neill Bahia, as I said before, come in lots of different variations, and you've got tops as well, you've got shorties and everything like that. But essentially the thing that really links them all together is the style of stitching throughout everything is always going to be Flatlock, and this neoprene itself is always going to be the Ultraflex super stretch neoprene the whole way through. Okay, you've got a few different variations in the range in terms of the entry system, and then you've got a few different variations in the range in terms of thickness. Definitely strongly recommended for UK summertime and one of our best sellers every year.